speaker, Mr. Satish Ganta, and participants, a very good morning to one and all. I, Chandraprabha KS, Assistant Professor, Department of CSE, welcome you all for the webinar series IT Industry Trends hosted by the Department of CSE. Before I request Mr. Satish Ganta to start the session, I take this opportunity to introduce today's speaker, Mr. Satish. Currently, he is an Executive Vice President and India Head at Spheridian Technologies, Bangalore. His specialities include Oracle Cyber CRM, Salesforce Automation, Project Management Professional, Service Delivery Management, Program Management, Client Engagement, On-Site Offshore Delivery, and US Healthcare Insurance Domain, SME. He worked across different industries in various capacities such as CRM Practice Director, Cyber Development Manager at Amerisource Bergen, Project Lead at Booz Allen Hamilton, Senior Consultant at CGI Federal, Senior Consultant at Silverline Technologies, Senior Systems Associate at NIIT Technologies Limited. Satish has proven to have good insights, great work ethic, and an ability to work well with the people even under challenging circumstances. Sir has great communications and leadership abilities and has won the respect of others in the IT organization and the business areas. So, in this session, Mr. Satish will be delivering a talk on adapting to changing customer needs. Thank you, sir, for accepting our invitation to deliver a talk. Now, I request sir to start the presentation. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you, ma'am, for that introduction. I hope everyone can see me as well as everyone can, hear me well. That is more important. It is always it's always easier to actually do these talks in front. That is what even I would prefer. But in the current COVID situation, we are kind of forced to do this now. Everything online. To begin with, I certainly hope that everyone is safe, everyone is healthy in this, tough situation. I hope, particularly for college students, it's very hard. If you're going to be in the final year, I'm sure you're waiting for a lot of opportunities to knock your door. And I think it's, the kind of COVID has certainly put us in a backseat for most of us, I think, but it's a matter of time, and I think we need to kind of have the patience and kind of get through this process. So to begin with, I would like to thank the faculty as well as the SIT Institute for giving me an opportunity to talk today. The topic that I'm going to address is a very broad topic, so I'll try to cover as much in the layman terms so that you guys are able to understand. And the whole objective is for you to kind of expect or know what to expect when you walk out, right? As in into the corporate world. What does it mean today's customers? What do they expect? So having gone through a bit of 25 years of experience of my own, I'm going to, as much as possible, speak to the real life scenarios that I have gone through, which hopefully will help you guys in terms of what to expect. But prior to me starting on the topic, I want to thank the institute. I think SIT Institute, which basically stands for Siddhaganga Institute of Technology. I have visited this institute a couple of times as part of the recruitment process. Wonderful institute. And I think the work that they have done, I would like to comment. I think if I'm not mistaken, I think at the inception time, they only had 3 branches. I think they started off with civil, mechanical, and electrical, with not more than 100 to 120 students. But I think if we come back to today, now I think you guys have a lot of undergraduate programs, and I'm going to cover just one particular part about that. I think you have close to 10 to 12 undergrad programs and close to 16 postgraduate programs with close to 1,400 students annual intake. So I think that's very commendable. So I would like to congratulate as well as thank the institute for this. I think this is really wonderful in terms of what they're doing for the students. Take advantage of everyone being remote, right? So, why not conduct this webinar sessions? And I looked at some of the topics that I think some of you guys have already gone through, really interesting ones. So I hope it is turning out to be a learning exercise. And even today's topic, I'll try to, as I said, keep it as simple as possible, so that you guys can actually understand rather than me, throwing just the big buzzwords, right? That's kind of the background. Quick introduction about myself before we get started on the topic. I think ma'am kind of talked about it, but I think that was more from the consulting firms that I've been part of. I actually did my engineering in electronics from kind of an unknown college, a small town called Bellary. Some of you guys might be knowing, north of Karnataka. And that was back in 1994. And spent, pretty much got into the IT space right away. I think, I was one of those lucky people where the IT boom was happening, and I, kind of got hold of that and, got caught into that. And so pretty much got my career started in Delhi, working with NIIT Technologies for a couple of years, and then moved to US right away. I spent actually good 14 years in US, and I think that is where I think the true me kind of got identified through the consulting skills that I actually could acquire, learning from others and watching others. And that is what I will probably try to focus in terms of what I have learned and what is it that you guys can actually probably set the bar high when you come outside in terms of the expectations, right? But I moved back to India for good, early 2011, Jan 31st to be precise. And I've been part of Spheridian Technologies since then. So I've taken up multiple roles under Spheridian, but in the last 3 to 4 years, I've been heading Spheridian India. Kind of a boring job, right? Management job, but someone has to do it. But that's been the case, and I think it's been a really good 9-year ride in India, as well as more importantly with Spheridian. So with that, I'm going to get started. I hope, let me share my screen. Okay, hopefully everyone can see my PowerPoint presentation.
Yes, sir, we can see your screen.
Okay, fantastic. So whoever says sir, they will not be allowed to ask a question. So please call me by name. I think I'm as young as you guys. All right. I would love to get one laugh, but it's harder to do that over the Teams. Okay, guys. So as I said, I picked this topic rather than talking about technology. I thought there is so much more to the tech than the technology today, right? And I think that is exactly what I would like to focus on, where I kind of talk about how the journey started. And I think I'll try to align my talk as much with my own journey, back in early 90s to the expectations today. And it has changed so much that it's just mind-boggling, as well as wonderful in terms of the opportunities. So that would be the focus. Before I do that, why don't I take the opportunity to introduce who we are as well. I do not know if any of you guys have had a chance to look at us, in terms of on the website. But we have been, we started in 2003, so it's been good 18 years, Spheridian as a company. We started in US, and quick highlights. I've got just 1 or 2 slides, so I'm not going to bore you guys, but I thought, why not know a little bit about me as well as a little bit about the company. We are a CMMI level 5 company. We've got presence in good number of countries, 6. And I think we are globally growing well. The biggest change I think that we are trying to bring it within the organization is more of consulting thought process rather than services, right? So it is, and that's what if you look at even last year, we kind of changed our branding as well and the message. So we now look at ourselves as a global solutions and consulting company, right? So we would like to help our clients with the right solutions, but more importantly, the expert advice that we can provide via consulting. And that's where I will actually talk about what does it mean to be a consultant for you guys. So at a very quick glance for you guys in terms of what we do, I know this is pretty overwhelming, but like any other services portfolio, I think we do have a good coverage in terms of what we offer. We also have our own set of products, which I haven't mentioned here. And those product companies are running kind of independently with, the product engineering team. But otherwise, on the services front, which is where I'm, mostly involved, we do, you name it in terms of RPA, AI, ML, analytics, a lot of cloud computing work, a lot of customer experience work, mobile application development, web application development. So I think we have kind of, really diversified in terms of our portfolio. So again, don't get into the details of this, but just for you guys to have a glance of, who we are and what we do. Okay, so let's talk about this topic, right? So ever-changing customer expectations, right? And to kind of give you guys the background on why I chose this topic, back in early 90s, I would say, right, which is where my career started, the expectations were so different. When we got out of the college and actually got into NIIT, I think, from my perspective, but I think individually, each one of us were more of a silo players, right? So the expectation for us was if we are going to be in the technical area, we would know that particular programming language, right? So, from my end, I basically knew C programming, and that's how I started my career. If you're a business analyst, you probably know a little bit about the domain and the process, but you are not expected to be an expert. Okay, and again, this is back in where the customer demands were not high. If you're a quality assurance guy, as in a QA guy, tester, you would know how to run the test scripts, and you would run how to test the application. But again, you are not supposed to have the knowledge of the domain and the process and really come up with the innovative ideas of brainstorming with the customer. So bottom line is the expectations in terms of the project team members were not as high. That doesn't mean that it was easy to do the work, but it was just not the same. And that things have changed. And that's what I'm going to talk in terms of what exactly has changed and how is it that we can prepare. So just give you in terms of what exactly a traditional IT background looked like, right? So back then, all the applications were being built ground up. So when I say ground up, everything started as a greenfield implementation from scratch. So which means that, the database layer, the middleware, the front end, each one of them had to be built, using whatever platforms that were available. But there was nothing called COTS product. And I do not know if you guys know COTS. And I really don't know if I should be asking questions because I do believe there are 200 plus students. So I'll probably try because there might be just too much back and forth audio. Unless ma'am, if you think that I should be asking questions, making it interactive, I can. But I think there is a Q&A towards the end, the last 15 to 20 minutes. So certainly we'll open up, and if there are any questions that you guys have, please, feel free to ask me, sorry. So in terms of, so everything was ground up, right? So the project development cycle was very long. My first project it went live after 18 months. Now imagine if I'm a customer and if I've given set of requirement specifications to you guys, you tell me that, hey, I'll come back to you after 18 months and show you what you wanted. There's so many things that can go wrong. But that used to be the pain point. That used to be the challenge back then. And things have moved quite a bit, changed quite a bit. We didn't have as much maturity in terms of the software development lifecycle. Yes, CMMI was there. Agile actually got introduced way back, I think in 1980s, if I'm not mistaken. But, the adoption of those maturity models was not as much. So the only model that really worked back then was the waterfall, right? I hope you guys know what is waterfall methodology. So it is basically every activity is happening sequential, right? So a typical IT project, if you look at it, you will have planning phase, you will have the analysis phase, you have, or what we call as a discovery or requirements phase, you have your design, build, testing, and then actually deployment. But each of those phases were actually going linear, which means that the second phase would not start until the phase one gets over, the phase one gets signed off, and then only the phase two begins. So if I'm sitting in, say, phase three, which could be the design or the build, and if there is a particular requirement which I did not understand well, or if the requirement interpretation itself was not right, or if the customer did not think of a particular requirement, we're already going in the wrong direction because the design has already happened. So there were quite a few challenges back then, and again, enterprise projects, went through these challenges a lot more than maybe the small scale ones. Also, the whole, the programming was written in a manner where I think it was always difficult to do any kind of reverse engineering, right? Back then, there were no package solutions, which is all the reason why we used to do all the ground up development. And I'll talk a little bit more about package solutions down the line. And everything was more of a CapEx model. CapEx means capital expenditure. You guys might have heard about it, which means that if I were to have a IT project, all my investment has to be upfront, in the sense that I have to buy the software, I have to buy the hardware, the whole infrastructure setup. Even though 18 months later, I'm actually going to see the results, I got to have the upfront expense. So which is the primary reason why I think the cloud model was started getting adopted much better now, which is what we'll talk in the next slide. So I think I mentioned about this a little bit in the previous slide itself. I've just at a high level talked about this is not a methodology that we really need to know or understand too much, because this is not something that is popular now. Everybody is moved towards the agile and the Scrum way to deliver. But quick couple of highlights that I missed to mention is there were very few front-facing roles. So when I say few front-facing roles, if you look at a particular project team, I'm talking about a lot of this from an IT information technology perspective, and it doesn't matter whether you are talking from a civil or a manufacturing or anything. There are IT projects everywhere. So these are not a particular domain specific. Now, if you look at a particular IT project in terms of quickly the roles, you will have a project manager, you will have a solution architect, you will have a business analyst, you will have your developers, testers, pretty much, right? Now, majority of these people do not face the client. One or two people who would face the client is the solution architect, maybe business analyst, and the project manager. So what is happening is the bulk of the project team are never hearing directly from the customer. And I think if you don't hear directly from the customer, it's like a Chinese whisper where, by the time the information actually flows down to you guys, you would never understand why customer would like to implement a particular requirement, right? So the requirements are not really in the forefront and you're already thinking of a solution. So it's a very bad way to design. So that was, again, another challenge, very few roles that were actually facing the customer. The customer touch points. When I say customer touch points, when you have a particular project, how often the project team engages with the customer, right? That's the customer touch point. Back in those days, in the waterfall methodology, you would talk to the customer during requirements phase. You kind of shut the door. You do it at the design, towards the end of it, and again it is more of a documentation review, and then you go back and then start doing the build. The build can go for 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, depending on the complexity of the project, and then you come back to this testing phase, which is where the customer touch point again comes back. So the possibility of customer not having any clue what actually is happening other than some touch points in terms of the the weekly status reports and the reviews and whatnot, but the true application review is not happening for a very, very long time, and that was a huge challenge. So when we talk about the new slides, on this one, you'll see how much we have moved on from that. So when I say later, it is pretty much in the last, I would say, 10 to 15 years, or even I can say last maybe a bit more than that. But early 2000 onwards, I think a lot of changes have happened in terms of one, coming up with the package solutions, right? So you guys would have heard of COTS products, which is nothing but commercial off the shelf, right? Which means that imagine you want to buy a particular product from Reliance, right? You're basically going in, you're taking something off the shelf. It is, you're not going to get that product to home and then do something about it. It is ready-made. It is already there, meeting your specifications, and you're there to use it, right? So that became pretty much where I think a lot of this product companies, whether it is Oracle, Microsoft, SAP, and you talk about UiPath from an RPA perspective, a lot of COTS products started coming up, whether you talk about networking, you talk about applications, you talk about automation, you talk about database, which means, one, yes, the investment completely reduced, because now I'm actually taking a particular product which is expected to have 80% meeting your requirements, right? So we call it as a 80-20 model. Anytime you take a COTS product, they go with that 70-30 or 80-20, which means that 80% or 70% has already met the specifications, because the product is actually verticalized based on the industry best practices. And now you need to just configure the 20 to 30%. That means the time to deploy, I talked about how 18 months has now completely shortened. And we have started actually seeing applications going live in the matter of 2 to 4 months. So it's really good from the customer point of view, but now you've got to actually deliver and fit so many complexities that we just talked about within the 2 to 4 months. And that's where the methodology really helps. We talk about cloud computing. I mentioned about the COTS products like Microsoft Dynamics and few other ones. And I'm sure you guys are aware in terms of how these work. They're all subscription model, which means it's as you pay as you use it, right? So it could be per month per user, or per user per year, however it is, depending on the product. Moving on to the next slide. So I think I kind of touched on this. So we have all the package solutions today. We have a lot of products that are available on cloud. We are having a lot of frameworks, right? So the whole concept of programming taking a backseat has started happening. Okay, not to suggest that you should not know programming languages. There is absolute need for guys who know Python and the JavaScript or React.js, however it is. But there are also a lot of available frameworks which you can kind of now use it to enhance your, the development lifecycle can be reduced, but more importantly, the tested frameworks are there for you to now build applications on top of it, right? So if anyone is aware, if you look at Microsoft Azure has, on the application side, I can actually now build apps much faster on Microsoft Azure compared to building ground up using .NET, ASP.NET, and whatnot, right? So there's a lot of available frameworks today. Naturally, all that has helped in reducing the development lifecycle. The software is more scalable. Reason being, it's on cloud, right? So naturally, as and when I need to add more users, it's a matter of increasing the hardware sizing, whatever it is required for us to get what we need. I'll quickly talk about agile methodology down the line, which is more of an iterative development, which means that I do not keep the customer somewhere in the hiding. I'm actually showing him pretty much every 2 weeks something, right? So I'm sure you guys have heard about the sprint. So typically a sprint goes anywhere between 2 to 3 weeks in the agile methodology. So I take the spec as in requirements, I build it, I show it to him, and then I move on to the next sprint. So it really helps the customer to make sure that, one, we are on track, Second, we have clearly understood, and when I say we as a services integrating company, SI company, we have actually understood what the customer wants, right? So I think this has certainly helped. And I talked about the capex model. Now it is opex, which is more of operating expenditure. So it is as and when you actually see, you're going to find the expense, right? I'm not going to spend time on the methodology document. This methodology, but guys, this is what we use. Okay, naturally we customize this depending on the customer, depending on the mode that they would like to work with. But if you guys see in the center how discovery, build, and validate, it's actually kind of going in a loop. So you do your initiation, which is all the planning, and then you have rollout and the closure. But the most important thing is that loop where we discover, we get the requirements, we build, we validate, and we go back, right? So this is that 2-week or 3-week cycle. And then, we list out all the different activities that happen, the deliverables, the templates, whatnot, right? And again, this is kind of, Spheridian's way of working with our customers, but I thought I'll give you guys, kind of a glimpse of how it might look complex, but it's a matter of getting one by one things done. Okay, so what exactly is the customer expectations? Let me keep an eye on the time. All right, I think we are okay. I'm going to spend the next almost 30 to 40 minutes just on this particular one, not exactly on this slide, but on these data points. To begin with, so if you look through the slide, today they're looking for consultants. They're looking for a domain and process knowledge guys. They need consultants with multiple technical skills. Soft skills, I'm sure you guys have, the institute probably does a lot of sessions on the soft skills, data visualization, packaging, and presentation. I think this is the skill set of today's IT consultant. And honestly speaking, it may not even be IT. I think any consultant, doesn't matter whether you're going to work in, an automotive industry and you're going in as a manufacturer engineer, or you're working for construction company and going in as a civil engineer. It doesn't matter. You are expected to have all the skills, which is what not back when I came out of my college, right? To some extent, the only skill I probably had was that second one, which is the consultants with multiple technical skills. But even there, I thought I didn't have multiple technical skills. It was more of a silo skill. I mean, yes, I knew a little bit about the database. I knew a little bit about the middleware, but I just knew nothing but the front-end programming, right? So things have changed. So the demands are pretty high from the customer. And I think I really hope that our students today are coming out of the universities as much as possible well prepared. Some of this will only come with experience, but some of it will come with the right mindset and the attitude as well. Okay, so let's talk about what exactly a consultant does, right? I wish I could really answer the question, ask these questions to you guys, but can we make that? I mean, how were the other webinars that were happening that you guys have attended? Was it back and forth interactive, or the Q&A was probably towards the end?
Sure, sir. If the participants have any questions, we will relay them to you.
Okay.
If you want to ask, you can ask them. Okay, any responses, we will relay them back to you.
Oh, okay. So it will be not something that I can hear them, correct?
Yeah.
Understood. Okay. Yeah, then I think that's okay. We'll keep the session going. And I think towards the end, we will just open up for Q&A. That would be better.
Yeah.
So what exactly does a consultant do? To begin with, everyone is a consultant. Each one of us need to be a consultant. Whether, consultant is the one, somebody who provides professional expert advice, right? And the moment you say expert, naturally there is a experience that becomes the key aspect of it. But whatever experience we get, how exactly do you use that experience to kind of build a story and instill confidence to with the customer? Now, the word customer itself, I'm going to kind of redefine how exactly, if we all look for end customer for us to improve our skills, I think it's going to take forever, because not everyone gets an opportunity to engage and work with the customer day in, day out, right? So I'll come back to that point. But consultant is somebody who wears customer hat, right? So which means when I say customer hat, not in the literal sense, they're always thinking about the customer. So when there is a pain point, when there is a problem at the customer side, the consultant actually becomes one of them, right? If you're not a consultant, right, and this is a very misused word, but if you're not a consultant, you're being very reactive, right, where you're waiting for the customer to tell what their problem is, and you're trying to figure out what exactly how to solve it, take your own time, whatnot. But I think if you're wearing the customer hat, you really don't need the customer to tell you that there is a problem. You realize that there is a problem, and you go up and running and do everything possible to fix. Not because you're trying to help them, but you're becoming one among them, right? So and it's a mindset. That's why I said, you need to wear the customer hat. And consultant can be an expert in the technology area. It could be on the domain. It doesn't really matter. End of the day, they're there to work with the customers on their problem statements. I actually want to take this opportunity to give one real life scenario, and this is what I'll try to do as much as possible whenever I can. A couple of them actually comes to my mind. One of them is I had an employee working actually in Spheridian, and he was not the most vocal guy, right? He would not communicate much. He would not be responding to emails within the organization as fast as we should ideally do. So there was always a bit of a dissatisfaction. But when it comes to the customers, the customers that we were engaging and he was working, the customers always had fantastic feedback on this guy, right? His name was Srini, and then they would be always like, Satish, we love Srini, the work they do, the work he does and whatnot. So it was very odd, right? So when I spoke to him saying that, Srini, how is it that, sometimes I wonder why you don't respond or why you don't act, or why, I expect you to be a bit more vocal on what we can do to improve, but I get fantastic feedback from the customer, right? His answer was, I work for the customers. So even though he's working for Spheridian as a firm, he was always trying to be more of a guy for the customer, right? I'm not saying it's completely right. I think you got to, and that's where the definition of consultant customer is. You just don't have to look at an external customer as a customer. Even the internal stakeholders, your own subordinates, your own peers, your own management, your own HR, they all can be customers for you. Only then that entire so-called consulting skills will improve, because you get more opportunities to kind of practice, right? And I'll get back to that point. So it was very interesting in terms of how he was thinking, right? I didn't have too many employees who ever answered like that, because they were either good on both the sides, which is, they knew how to engage and help the customer, but they also knew how to engage internally. Or maybe employees who don't do good on either side. But here was one consultant who was, just more focused about the customer. Want to mention one other scenario where, again, this is something that happened in one of the projects that I was working, where for a US client, we had workforce sitting across the globe working with this customer. And, we had already gone live with one of their applications. And during production, we had this massive issue where, some of the data, right, records were actually getting deleted. And I think the issue existed almost for like 1 or 2 days, right, which is really severe, that you're losing data, customer data, in a live application. Now, and I was actually part of the team, like a program manager, and there was a project that was being run by our guys. What happened is the customer was basically pointing fingers at us, right, as in the vendor, saying that what have you guys done? When are you going to fix it? And I think to some extent, what our guys were doing is there was a little bit of blame game that was happening, and so they became defensive, right? So the moment someone points fingers at you, if you're not able to kind of step back, comprehend what they're saying, why they're saying, you become very defensive. And when you become defensive, the problem doesn't get solved, right? And that's what was happening. But more importantly, the one gentleman basically jumped in, and he called the entire the client team as well as the vendor team, right, on a particular call together, and he was completely losing it. But he was not pointing fingers at his team, or he was not pointing fingers at the customer team. He basically made a simple statement that we have an issue, and here we are not working as one team. Doesn't really matter who messed it up. The first thing we are going to do is in the next 2 hours, we're going to work as one team and figure it out and solve this. See, the moment a statement like that comes from a vendor, the client has no choice than to accept that, what, he's one of us, right? Because he's making their problem as his problem. And he's basically saying that let's just get to it, let's solve it. We'll do the so-called, lessons learned afterwards. So the mindset is so important in terms of who do you represent? Do you represent the client, or do you want to be very defensive and represent your own team, what you do, right? So I thought, I think it hopefully give you guys, what exactly it means to be a good consultant. So I talked about the skill set, right? I don't know how many of you guys are coming from the computer science background or any programming background, but I think today technology is becoming a must, irrespective of which domain you go in. Back in those days, we were absolutely fine to have one particular skill and survive. That is not the case. Today, the customers expect you to have multiple skills. And this is just on the hard skills. I'm talking about on the technical skills. There's a lot more that you need to have. But within the technical skills as well, I don't think we can survive now to say that I am a Java developer, or I am a .NET developer, or I know HTML, CSS. For the one particular skill becomes more of a liability because you can only do that, and you really don't know how the rest of the system is going to fall in place, right? So you would have probably heard the need is we need to have full stack developers, which means that they got to know the front end, they got to know the middleware, they got to know the back end. And today it is not actually so tough to build out each of this because of the frameworks that I talked about it. But I've given some examples in terms of you got to know your HTML, could be Angular, it could be Python, Java on the middleware side. You can actually do it on the front end too. Could be SQL, could be MongoDB on the database side. So the need is to have multiple skills. Now, if you're not a technical guy, and let's say you are a project manager, you cannot be a dummy project manager anymore. And there's so much to talk about from a project management perspective. But today, the need is the project managers have to be agile, in the sense that they got to have the latest, the maturity models that are out there, the tools that are there. But more importantly, they also need to have domain knowledge. So if I'm putting a project manager for a manufacturing client, implementing a CRM application, a customer relationship management, the project manager need to have the PMP skills. The project manager needs to have the manufacturing domain skills. The project manager should also know the CRM skills, as in the sales, service, and marketing. See, that's just the expectation, because we cannot now have, in a 4-month project, let me put a project manager, let me put a CRM guy, let me put a domain guy, SME guy. It doesn't work like that. So you're going to wear multiple hats. The same thing goes with the quality assurance guys. You've got to have the domain knowledge. The process and the domain knowledge is a must for you guys to do well. consultants, customers expect anybody who walks in, and I'm talking about here developers. So if you remember, I made a point about how there were very far and few front-facing people, either a project manager or a business analyst or an architect. The developers never really talked with the customer, but that's changing today. Today, everyone is expected to face the client, and face the client not in terms of walking in and talking to them in person, but it could be on all this nice collaboration tools that we have, whether Teams or Zoom or however it is. The developers are expected to engage with the customer, because gone are the days where somebody just takes the information, passes on that information to the other person for that person to actually fulfill. So it doesn't work like that. So and same thing, if you're a CRM consultant, you need to have the knowledge across all the verticals of CRM, right? The sales part, the customer service, after customer acquisition, and the marketing. So the expectations are pretty high. So accordingly, the roles are changing, right? So what I have on the left-hand side is what it used to be before, more of a silo players. And what you have on the right-hand side is, the guys where the redefined roles, which means that they have more than one skill. So, and this is something that we went through as a journey, even in Spheridian, where we used to call our developers as, system analysts or technical developers. But now we look at them as techno-functional. So the moment you call somebody functional, they have to have that process and the domain knowledge, which means that they can be put in front of the customer. If you're just technical, you will never be facing the customer, which I think is a huge drawback when it comes to somebody's growth. So technical developers are now looked at as techno-functional consultants, or the expectation. Business analysts should be looked at as SMEs. So business analyst is not somebody who just knows how to talk, but they need to know how to engage with the customer, brainstorm. So if I'm a business analyst implementing HRMS, as in human resources management system, for a large customer out there, and let's say we are implementing recruitment or onboarding, one of the HR modules, I cannot just go there and ask, so what exactly are you looking to do? That's not the way the conversation is going to get started. The conversation is, I hear, I believe you're interested in, implementing recruitment. Here's our suggestion, because this is where how recruitment has changed today in, if you're talking about India market or any other regional market, you're supposed to give all the insights about that particular module. What are the best industry practices that you can actually bring in? And the reason you're doing it, because you've done this with 10 other clients. So you take the information about what you have learned, and then you kind of pass it on to other customers. So the expectation is not to be in the back end and just hear. It is actually to engage, and more importantly, to drive, not just engage. Similarly, the project managers, I talked about it. You've got to be very agile. You have to have the functional knowledge. The same thing goes with the solution architects and the quality testers. So it's really changing in terms of not just how the customers are demanding, but even the companies, even the organizations. I'm sure you guys hear a lot of news about, recently some large SIs basically let go of few people because, according to them, they were all legacy, right, in terms of not able to scale them up. And this is it, because they're kind of still stuck trying to do one or two silo things. And today the expectations are a bit higher. Soft skills. Now, I think I just want to keep a check on the time. Soft skills, I'm sure you guys are very well aware, and I think today's generation, there is no doubt in it. I think you guys come with a lot more confidence. Whenever I have done visits to the universities as part of the recruitment and the placement, I think I'm really amazed with the confidence that you guys actually have, the way you articulate your thoughts, and I think to some extent the storytelling. So I'm not going to spend time on this because I'm sure you understand the importance of it, but this is one of the skills that is a complete must Today, we do not hire, and when I say today, it's not just today, but in the last few years, we do not hire a single external consultant into Spheridian who do not have these attributes, right? So we give as much. So even though we might be very, very impressed on the fact that he's a really good Java developer, if these things are not there, it's going to be very hard for that person to grow and for us to get most out of that person. So, and it's not just Spheridian, it is every firm out there that actually does this. So how do you improve, right? It's all well and good, the soft skills, but what exactly do you do to, improve on the soft skills? As I said, a lot of people, the young generation, what happens is I think you're waiting for the end customer to kind of implement or practice, and it's just, you cannot practice, right? You cannot, if there's a cricket match that you got to play, you're not going to walk in on, day one of the test match and then expect you to do well. What you do is you practice for many, many number of days prior to the test match on the pitch. And for me, that pitch is the outside that external customer landscape, which is our internal. So within the organization, you have your, as I said, subordinates, peers, right? Whatever internal stakeholders. You also have your family, right? Your parents, your siblings, whatnot, your friends. I think if you're able to take every opportunity when you engage with them and treat each other as customer, I think a lot of those attributes that I talked about, soft skills, I think will automatically improve. Because the only way to improve is to practice, practice, practice. So I'll give you one example. Again, trying to see if real life scenarios is something that you guys can connect. So we had, I actually went through this. So one of the customer demonstrations, right? So when I say demonstrations, we had a product that we had to showcase to, a number of people. This was one of my initial demos, right? So I was not really good at it. And that's how it is for most people. There are very few people who are born with amazing presentation skills. For majority of them, I think it is all about learning through the process. So the more you do it, the more you get better. I'm sure the more I continue to do these webinars, the more I get better. And I'll take feedback in terms of how I did towards the end of this. But going back to that particular instance where I was actually doing a demo, and there was one instance in that demo where the application crashed, right? So it just crashed. Now, how do you react to that? There are like 15, 20 people in the room. They're expecting to, see the entire workflow, however it is, and the system crashed. Now, I panicked because I didn't know how to react. And, I had a very bad body language. I was kind of looking down. I was feeling guilty. I didn't know what to say. And so that was an experience, right? And actually, somebody who was senior to me could kind of take over and, say a few things and till I get the application back up and this one. So I kind of not just about lost 10 minutes, but more importantly, I don't think I could give them the confidence about not just me, but about the application. See, what you're now, you're actually carrying the brand of the company, the credibility of that application, and about you. So if you're not doing well, it actually has an impact on the larger this one. But again, sometimes you have to go through a bit of a downfall to learn from it and move forward. But if I were to do it again today, right? And today, if I'm doing a demo and let's say, this particular webinar, the video or the audio stops working. I hope audio not, but something else, right? Where the subject is not something that I'm able to talk. I should be able to still keep somehow that engagement rather than being defensive, rather than being guilty, and kind of have a little bit of that sense of humor. Crack some silly joke, saying that this was exactly how I planned it. I knew that I'm going to crash because I actually needed a 10 minutes break. I need some coffee. Why don't we all get some coffee? And then, this application will automatically be back up, right? Something like that, right? And I just made this up. But what I mean is, because of the practice and the experience, you get the maturity now to see how to handle. But the lessons learned is, if you believe you are the smartest person in the room, you got to have that confidence that you are the smartest person in the room, and there is nobody who's going to actually downplay you until you downplay yourself, right? So it is dependent on you on how you can kind of rise from that particular occasion. And it would be amazing on how people would support you. The customers, they're not there to pinpoint fingers, right? So they would laugh. They would be like, Satish, actually, you know what, I needed coffee, so I'm so glad you crashed the application. So things can completely get away from the actual issue, where you now get the breathing space to figure it out. And everyone has just forgotten that something even bad happened, right? So again, this can be just some small tips or tricks, but you can't wait for an opportunity to get better at it. So you got to, but you do get these opportunities in your personal life. And that's where I suggest all the time to even our employees that every time you get an opportunity, try to engage in a very professional manner, right? India has got 22 languages. So I completely, understand how we all would love to talk in our local language and be very comfortable. But unfortunately, local language is going to be used as a global language. You can't talk to a US customer in Hindi or, Kannada, right? You got to speak in the language that they can understand. And that language is the business language, not the technical language. That's where the process and the domain expertise is needed. I have so many stories to tell. I used to have one employee who was very vocal, but only knew Hindi. And a lot of our employees know him. And there was one client call where multiple client calls were happening, and I used to engage with the client. He was always there with me, and I would always tell him that Jay, why don't you let me also make you talk to the client. I think it is good to express, and why don't you talk about that particular issue you fixed. His immediate response is, Satish, I have absolutely no issue talking, but they don't know Hindi. It came as a joke, but he actually meant it, because I can't speak to them in English, because his English was not the strength, which is understandable. Not everyone has to have the best and the right English. I think it is able to communicate in however you can, whether it is broken English or whether it is amazing grammatically correct English. The fact is you are able to put together a story and articulate is more important. And because you're technically strong, or because you know your subject matter very well, that's what matters. If you don't have the data, if you don't have the content, you can't just keep bluffing people with good talk, because it's a matter of time they get to know that what, this guy is all superficial, right? So you got to have your core strength. Excuse me. Got to have your core strength, the hard skills, but the soft skills complement. Excuse me. Give me a second, guys. All right, let's move on. Storytelling. I think this is something that I think even I have picked up only in the last few years, a lot more, but didn't realize how powerful it is. I think anything you want to convey as a message, you want to share a vision, you want to convey a message, you got to put together in a story, which means that it has to be a paragraph that you tell, right? Where you're connecting the dots one by one, where you know exactly the questions that you're going to get from your audience, and you're trying to answer them through your story. And storytelling actually, there are studies being done that it actually has an impact on your human brain, where because you connect with the audience through the empathy. And when you connect with the audience with the, on the empathizing side, what happens is, I think they will remember, right? I think they will remember what you talked about. They will remember the story. Now, I'm not talking about telling a story about a particular, movie or something, right? Bollywood movie. I'm talking about customer use cases. I'm talking about customer journey that we want to help in terms of whatever transformation that they're going through. You put together the entire data and the technical standpoint through a story. If it is broken, then what happens is it becomes like that waterfall methodology. It becomes reactive. So I'll give you an example. And I've seen this with few students, and I try to give feedback. I think as part of the placement, whenever we have done the visits, and the as part of the management interview, I get a chance to talk to probably the 10 to 15 students who make it all the way through, and I try to keep them at ease, and I'm trying to ask them questions saying that, hey, tell me something about yourself, right? So when I ask that question, their answer would be, and some of them are really good, but some of them, first of all, it's Google answer. I'm a very hardworking person. I'm a genuinely nice person. This, that. So it doesn't really relate because I don't get to know you, right? But more importantly, the answers are broken. So it is individual statements. So tell me something about yourself. So my name is this. My parents are this, and that's it, right? Doesn't, and then, oh, okay, so what do you think of this institute? Then they answer that question. Okay, what do you think your strength is? They answer that question. What do you think? So what is happening is I got to retrieve the information from them by asking, and they're very particular about yes and no, or to some extent a slightly lengthy answer for that particular question. But if I'm telling a story, and if I'm given an opportunity where somebody says, hey, tell me something about yourself, I should have like a 3-minute data point. Now you can always be polite and ask, would it be okay, or should I stop? Am I boring? Make it whatever engaging. But you should be able to tell in a manner where the person is actually listening and able to actually get to know you. That 3-minute talk doesn't become like where I have to reactively get information out, right? Now, storytelling doesn't happen again unless you have the confidence, but more importantly, you've got to practice. When you're telling about yourself, you're actually selling yourself, right? When you're telling about a particular product, you're selling the product. When you're telling about the organization, indirectly you're always selling the organization, as in you're creating a brand for that organization. So I believe storytelling should be a must. I'll give you guys one other example where recently we had to go to a customer site and do the discovery, right? Discovery means capturing the requirements, right? Understanding what the customer needs. And we had done really good preparation. We had some really good PowerPoint decks and the process flows, everything. But I think when we went there, and after day one, it was supposed to be 2-week session. But after 1 week, I think our team did realize that the expectation from the customer is very different from what we have done. Not because our preparation was wrong. Our preparation was really good, but our preparation was not in line with what the customer was expecting. Because the customer was expecting our team to tell how the customer should implement, not just on the technology side, but even on the business side. They wanted us to exactly tell, saying that, hey, here's how your current business works, and here's what the transformation will make it. Here's the changes that you need to do to your business process, which was, again, we had put all the process flows. We had done all the study of the domain, but because we didn't go with that thought process, our day one did not go as well. Now we did the corrective action. Day 2 onwards, we did fine, and this one. So just another example of where you think you've done well, and your customer is already 2 steps ahead. They just expect a lot today from our the consultants and the consulting company. Let me take a look at. Okay, so we have 1 hour. I'll try to wind up in another 10 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes. Now, how do you tell the story? Now, as I said, we are not talking about personal stories, but absolutely, when you get an opportunity, you walk out of this webinar. One thing I would love is you come across any external guy, as in a friend of friend, and he asks some simple questions saying that, hey, what do you do, or what did you do today, or how was your webinar? It shouldn't be a short story. I think you should put a lot of data points. You make it as a longer story, then I would be very happy that yes, some takeaway has actually happened from my message. Now, in front of the customer, it cannot be a bland story, right? It cannot be a dumb story. It cannot be a dummy story. It has to be a story where you put together all the right data elements. Yeah. So end of the day, as I said, the hard skills matter as much, if not more. It's just that you're now packaging that or complementing that with this. So the graphical representation is so much important. Each one of this attribute, you need it as every consultant. You cannot think that, I walk into a project, I'm a developer, somebody else is going to do this. Because today the technical developers are being put in front of the customer, or being put in front of the management, or being put in front of their supervisor, and they say that, hey, okay, why don't you give me a demo of the work you've done? Now, in that, you need to know how to tell the story. In that, you know how to do the demo, how to react when a demo doesn't go well, how to package the demo, and how to present the demo. And when I say present, the PowerPoint, the slides, the infographics, all that. So storytelling along with the powerful data, what makes most sense, right? So you got to figure out how exactly, and there are a lot of data visualization tools. I'm sure you guys have probably come across or played with some of them, but you need to represent the data in a graphical manner. It has to be the most easiest way to grasp the data, right? Today, on the data analytics side, the insights are becoming so powerful where I think it pretty much tells you what business corrective actions the management need to take. That is the insights that it is providing. So it is not just raw data being put in some decent manner, but it is actually giving you by doing all the analytics and the insights and the predictive analytics and whatnot. So data storytelling is again required on top of what you need to learn from a storytelling perspective. I wanted to show you a couple of slides, and then we can probably look to at least wind up my webinar, and I'll open up for the questions. So guys, this is the message, the future. Are you ready, right? The expectations are high, but I do believe that you do have the resources, from bandwidth, from network to the smartphones, to the Google, to whatnot, and the platforms, and, with all the amazing learning platforms like Coursera to Udemy to, Baiju to, whatnot. I think the resources are available. It's just a matter of, one, how much of hard work you want to put, but more importantly, how much do you want to practice whenever you're given an opportunity. Just do not wait for the test match to start. Do all the preparation upfront. You may not even get to play test match. You might become the 13th or the 14th player, right? But at least you have done all the mental preparation so that whenever that opportunity comes up, you really don't have to worry, right? It just triggers and it works. I want to quickly show you some slides on how we present. And these are just sample slides, nothing fancy. But okay, I did not do the design in terms of how the slide opened up. But this is a customer that we still are engaged with this customer, where we are actually talking to them in terms of all the different users of the application. So these are not actual customer guys, okay? These are all dummy, good-looking people, right? You got to put the good-looking guys so that people get engaged. But these are the various 5 different users. We have a consumer, we have an AC specialist. We are basically talking to a customer who sells different types of ACs. So we have an AC specialist, contact center agent, sales team, product consultant. So what we are doing is we are actually putting this actors, their names and their pictures. Okay, remember they're all dummy. They're not customer guys. But when we now walk through the workflow for rest of the so-called 3 months or 4 months, these are the names that we carry forward. So people would know that, so when your consumer walks in, so rather than saying when your consumer walks in, we say when Lisa walks in. And people know immediately, okay, Lisa, I remember she was a consumer, right? So this is how we prepare. If you look at it, it is the most simplistic, and I'm sure there are better ways to do it, maybe whatnot. But what we are trying to do is very easy to read, naturally good colors, give as much importance to the UI and the UX part. And that all comes with the good presentation skills. And as I said, today developers are expected to actually have these kind of skills. It's not an easy one. Not everyone is born with very creative way of doing it. So naturally, I got this done with our UX team. They can take it to the next level, but as a consultant, you're also expected to not put dummy data where, imagine this slide was put with just 4 bullet points, right? No picture, no name, Steve helping Lisa with installation request of the AC. And I just had 4 bullet points saying that help schedule, Steve onboards, capture, and this one. It was the most bland way of telling the story. Now this just looks good. There's infographics, there's good colors, there's pictures. So I'm trying to, everything that I talked about, trying to see how we represent in the slide. All right, I think I'm covered. I did make some rough notes for myself to see if there's anything that I really need to tell you guys. Yeah, go ahead. If there are any questions that I can answer, that would be, I'll be happy.
Yes, sir. We have some questions from our participants. So here, some companies ask for experience. Being a fresher, how to get experience apart from the internship?
Okay, I just stopped sharing. I'm so sorry. Okay, let me read the questions out. Some companies ask for experience. Being a fresher, how to gain experience apart from internship? It's a hard one. It's such a irony, right? Where you are looking for work and they're asking for experience, and you only can get experience from work, right? So there's no good or perfect answer, but my idea would be anything that you do, you may not get internship experience as well. But if you do get, I think it's wonderful. But even if you don't do internship, and let's say you create a project of your own, let's say you actually did, a charity fund, right, where you are actually raising the money for a particular cause, right? It is a project. Now, if you can represent that entire project in a packaged way that I just talked about, where you create the story, the reason why you did it, who kind of inspired you to do it, and what exactly, how you went about, what obstacles you had, how did you learn from it? See, there is no perfect story. Not everything goes through as per the plan. But as long as you're able to acknowledge the mistakes and then talk about how you learn from it, so convert each and every small experience of yours as a project, and companies are looking for you. Companies are not looking for, okay, did you write? Yes, we would love to get people who have Java experience or whatever experience. But if I were to train you guys in 2 weeks in Java, I'm sure you will be up and running. That is trainable. But the other aspects are not easily trainable. It takes longer time if you do not have the right mindset and the mentality. So my suggestion is use every experience of yours as a project and put together and represent yourself. If you walk in with a very bad body language saying that, yeah, but if you give me an opportunity, I will certainly prove that I can work. It doesn't work. It doesn't give any confidence to me that, okay, why should I hire you? But instead of that, you'll be very confident saying that, everything I've done, I think I've really been good in terms of how I learned from the mistakes, and these are some of the outcomes, and this is what made me. I think it would be wonderful.
Thank you, sir. Let's go on to the next question. Some students got multiple offers. What is your suggestion so that one student does not snatch another student's opportunity?
First of all, congratulations on getting multiple offers. You at least have a choice. Sometimes choice is hard, but always good to have the choice. I think we all want to look for each other. Everyone needs a break. I think what you guys do after the break is more important. So once you've got a break, it doesn't really matter where you don't need to keep looking for multiple offers. So that is something that I keep telling, not just, freshers like you guys, even the experienced people in the market. they continue to look for multiple offers. They're continuously looking at who's giving more money. I think there is so much money to be made in this IT market. I'm talking from an IT perspective, but there's so much more money to be made. I don't think you guys need to hit the jackpot on day one. So you get an offer, you're convinced on the organization. I think you should certainly allow your friends or your peers or whoever it is to make sure that they also get the equal opportunity.
Sir, our next question. Students after placement usually neglect their academics. What is your advice to students?
That's because they are students, right? I mean, we have to acknowledge that. I remember how I was when I got to know that I'm placed at an IIT, right? I think the next few days, I don't think I really cared about anything else, right? So it's understandable, but I think the message and the slides that I was trying to talk about, I think the demands are high. Do you want to be one in the crowd, or do you want to stand out? And in order for you to stand out, you do not have to be the topper. See, this whole concept of topper is somebody who's 98 or 99%. I'm not talking from that perspective. Marks are gone. Remember, once you're out of your college, no one is looking at your marks. Everyone is looking at how you performed in a particular project, how you performed in a particular event, how you are actually conducting yourself in the office or wherever you go, right? So I think you have to focus as much. I wouldn't say academics, but I think you should focus on the so-called consulting skills. I think that will be of immense help, where even if you can stand out to be in the top 10% of the crowd, right? So when I say crowd, I do not know how many engineering students come out every year in India, but you're talking about lakhs. You just do not want to be in that crowd because it's going to be hard. Everyone will have a job, but the job satisfaction is not going to be immense. But I think if you can stand out and be in the top 10%, for which you need to focus more on the soft skills, read some books, watch some videos, work on your what do you say, on your health in terms of fitness. If you look good in terms of not good looking, you feel good about yourself, which means the other person. So there's so much more you can do. It's not so much about academics, it is about what you can do outside that will help.
So let's go for the next question. What is the industry standard for data visualization? Which software is being used?
I don't think there is anything one. I think pretty much every platform, whether you're talking, with Oracle, whether you're going with SAP, you're going with, Microsoft, all these big guns, they all have really good data visualization platforms. And it's not so much. I think the platform will give you whatever it can in terms of making it look good, but it is your knowledge of that data and the process that is actually going to help you to build the right insights. Otherwise, you're looking at out of the box, whatever the platform can do, and you're showcasing that. It doesn't really help. I think it is more of using your domain expertise and understanding of the data matters. But I think from a platform perspective, I think there is no single one standard.
Sir. Next one. In current trend, can you suggest the programming subject that must be included in a curriculum to meet the industry expectations?
Good question. I wouldn't say a programming because, again, as I said, today the need is to have multiple skill sets. But Python is certainly one language that is heavily used, and the use cases of the Python is pretty heavy. I'm not sure if Python is part of your curriculum or not. But I think it is, as I said, you need to look at more of a full stack development. You have to look at whatever university can provide, whether it is the front end or the middleware or the back end related language, but you got to go outside. Not everything has to be taught in the classroom. There is so much of that external world that you can leverage today, as I mentioned few of the the online tutorials. So yes, I think the college can do whatever they can, but there is the technology market is changing so rapidly. we wonder sometimes how is it that we can catch up. We talk about legacy skills, but even though some of the latest skills are becoming, kind of not exactly legacy, but being updated or outdated because there's something better. So, people used to build on the mobile, applications, each of them as the native application. And even now we do build native applications. So we used to have a huge demand for iOS developers, Windows developers, or Android developers. But today it is all hybrid platform, right? Not just the hybrid platform where I can actually write one piece of code and works across all these platforms. And then Google has Flutter, right? Which actually now I can write the code where it works both on the desktop as well as on the web as well as on the mobile. So things are changing so fast. It's going to be very hard for the universities to catch up when we, who are actually on the ground dealing with these challenges day in day out, we are not able to catch up that well. So it would be unfair to expect, but yes, naturally the foundations and the concepts is very important. Getting a holistic picture of everything, whether from a COTS perspective or from an application development, from a cloud, computing services perspective, is very important. But you got to leverage the outside world.
Sir, our next question. As a Python developer, what kind of roles can I have in Spheridian?
Yeah, so I would love to see this person who's asking this question, right? So because it becomes a bit more interactive. Again, we are trying to think about role as in, what am I going to do? I think Python, if you know Python, it is a matter of, there are so many use cases that can fit in, right? We are currently using Python developers to build chatbots, right? So you guys probably are aware of the bots and the chatbots. So we are actually building chatbot that can, pretty much talk to the applications, do all the level 1 related mundane activity, all that. So, but that is just one use case. I think anything to do with, from an AI and ML perspective, for those use cases, I think Python will be an excellent choice.
Okay. Next question, sir. Is it worth to learn Android and web, or will it be better to change the domain itself?
Yeah, as I said, today, I think the mobile developers, I think there are a lot of college kids that come out and they're actually building applications. I mean, honestly speaking, my son is looking to do the same thing, and he's just in the 9th grade. So I think, as I said, things are changing pretty rapid. You cannot survive just to knowing Android. I think you got to know a lot more. As I said, today hybrid platforms are becoming more popular than the native applications, whether built on Android or iOS. There are requirements. There will be always requirements for mainframe. There will be requirements even for C++, but those are not that many, far and few. But my suggestion would be looking at kind of cross-platform, go across rather than just focusing on one.
Okay. Our next question is very interesting, sir. I don't know how you will take. Can we implement a waterfall model using agile methodology? If not, why?
No, interesting question. So if you actually break it down within agile, from an agile perspective, what we are doing is we are basically breaking it down into multiple sprints, right? And each sprint can be 2 to 3 weeks, and you define the user stories for each of the sprint. But when I look at individually every sprint, technically then it just follows the waterfall, right? So what we are doing is, again, it's not as simple as the way I defined it. But within my 2 weeks or a 3 week, I could be looking at getting the use case for that particular sprint, designing it, building it, testing it, validating with the customer, which actually can happen sequentially. It's just that it is actually now happening, instead of every 3-4 months, it is happening every 3-4 days. So the hybrid, what we call, right? So sometimes instead of going with waterfall or agile, we go with hybrid, because in a pure play agile methodology, you are expected to go all the way out where you actually go live, right? but you usually don't do that because there's a lot of interdependency. So you take that particular sprint all the way till the validation, but you're not pushing it to go live. We are not having the end users using it, and the next sprint kicks in, right? So that's why we call it as a hybrid rather than pure play agile.
So next question, is agile technology solve changing customer needs? If not, which technology and model combination is suitable for changing the needs?
It does help. End of the day, because the customer requirements itself are changing, and the customer and they have their own end customers and their demands are changing. What Agile is doing is, because of multiple customer touch points, it certainly helps to be in touch with the changes that are happening, and then we can kind of incorporate that in the following sprints. So it does help. No technology will help customer changing needs. It is a mindset, right? How well we can align with the customer, how proactively we are addressing the risk that they might see, and we coming up with a solution that could be a process solution or a technology solution. That is more important.
Next one, so which language is better in data visualization, either Ruby or Python?
I don't think I'm the right guy to answer this. I would be more than happy to have our analytics practice head to respond to this. So if you can just send this question to Vishwa, because I would be throwing a dice if I answer this question.
Sure, sir. We will redirect that question to someone. Later, we will do that. Sir, one
Sure.
more crazy question. According to your experience, why some of the students didn't get placed in your company? Spheridian technologies.
It's a tough one, right? There is no straightforward answer. There is nothing like, okay, that because of that particular aspect. As I said, it's just so many variables, in terms of our own need, the need of where all we have actually gone to get the students. And I think it is at that point of time what worked, right? I mean, I'm just saying, I have had conversation with the students where maybe from a technical standpoint they didn't do well, but I was so impressed about who they are and their personality. I was very confident that they have to become part of our organization. And I do know people who I got so impressed, and I've made it very apparent to them, and they've joined us and they have continued to stay with us. So there was something that worked. So it's very hard to describe, because these are not hard skills. As I said, a lot of you guys might have done on the technical standpoint, but somewhere we are, as I said, the demands are so high today. We are looking for a lot of things, and it's a bit unfair on you guys. But that is where I think these webinars should hopefully help, because I'm sure the universities will take some feedback and see how they can incorporate to some of these aspects, at least in part of curriculum. But whoever didn't join couldn't get the placement. I'm sorry.
Sir, our last question. One of our participants is trying to grow in the field of ML. So should he also be aware with the web, or is it better to develop the current skills above the intermediate level?
Yeah, I'm not sure if I understand the question. Should I also be aware with web, or is it better to develop? So it's very important when your guys are putting the question, you should read those questions for yourself, right? It's like writing an email. When I write an email, I always would like to read once before I click on send, because the other person need to understand. So let me try to read this again. I'm trying to grow in the field of ML. Should I also be aware with web, or is it different? Better to develop the current skill above the intermediate level? Yeah, the second part, I think I'm not too sure. But guys, I mean, AI, ML, they're all the buzzwords, right? RPA, IoT. But it is, you got to realize that your only strength can be at this point of time the platform. Okay. But what you can do is, if there is a particular domain that you like, I'm just saying, right? Maybe you like retail, maybe you like how Reliance works, or maybe you like automotive, and you have some connections where one of your relatives is working at Honda or something. I think getting some kind of a exposure to that domain, getting exposure to the data set, you guys can actually purchase, or there are free data sets that are available on the web today. I think you should download that data set. You should try to understand, and then, from an AI ML perspective, absolutely figure out what exactly, you want to do, what insights you want to build out of it. But let the platform not be the only aspect of it. That was the whole message, right? I think absolutely, I think AI, ML, and Python skills is going to be very key. Now, it's always been key for the last few years. It will continue to be. But if someone asks you saying that, okay, how did you utilize the skill, you need a story to tell. You can't just say that I learned it on Udemy or something. You should be able to talk about a particular data set you downloaded, how you understood the data, what you actually got out of it, what kind of ML programming did you do. I mean, it doesn't matter whether you have a placement, from campus or not. That employer will hire you, whoever talks to you, because you know what you're doing.
Thank you, sir, for answering all our queries. So we have come to the end of the current session. On behalf of the Department of Computer Science and Engineering, SIT, I express my sincere thanks to our speaker, Mr. Satish Ganta, Executive Vice President and India Head at Spheridian Technologies, Bangalore, for his kind acceptance to deliver a talk. It was a very informative talk, sir. You highlighted some points on how to improve the soft skills, data storytelling, how to present a demo and all. It really helps our students for their placement activities. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. My pleasure. And I really hope I would be happy to get some feedback, and I don't have to get only the good feedback. I'm okay to receive, anything that I could have done better, or maybe I could have covered a different topic, more gone deeper. So any feedback from the students would be very helpful.
Sure, sir. We will send you the feedback also. We will collect
Right.
and
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all participants. Kindly fill the feedback form. The link will be shared soon. And join us at 3 p.m. for the next session on lung segmentation analysis, ML approach by Dr. Raghavendra Selvan. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Close.
The red button is